Okay, this is an illustration that I'm going to do using a Wacom Cintiq 12WX tablet and Xara Designer Pro 7. On this particular drawing, I'm not going to be using a hard black line around all of my characters and then filling in with color on a layer underneath. I'm going to do most of the work without lines and just doing colored in shapes. So here you see I'm using the pen tool and the shape editor tool. I've made an outline and I'm beginning to stretch and pull and push these lines and these little control points to get the line exactly where I want it to be for the underlying shape of this particular character. The blue lines that you see here are a pencil sketch, which I did and scanned and brought in to Xara and put it on a lower layer, and it's locked. And here's the ellipse tool. Gonna make a nice little nose there and also the eye. Now when you make an ellipse, you can't really edit the little nodes until you do a Control-Shift-S to convert it to an editable shape. And when you do, as you see, I cut off the bottom portion of that ellipse for the eye so that I could then draw a line for the cheek, which will later be filled in. Sometimes I do just using the pencil tool like you see here to draw my lines, and sometimes I use the pen tool, which you use Shift F5 to get to, and I make these little shapes. And I'm not so concerned about having the lines and the shapes filled in at this point, because once you start filling in the shapes and you can't see the underlying sketch below it. So I just leave them all as just hollow basic outlines, and the lines are all just a uniform line without any kind of a style applied to it. You can see how I define the area that's going to be filled with color and then do a little bit of adjusting after I've made the shape. Pushing and pulling, sometimes converting the little control points from being a curved point to a sharp point. Of course, all these things can be edited later on. Now this part that I'm going to put, this is a honey badger for this story, and he has this kind of a light color on his back, and you'll see that I made it much larger than the area that it needs to be, and that's because later on when I fill it with color and the body shape with color, I'm going to use a clip view to combine the two shapes together, and that'll cut off that excess. So I'm just using this uniform line all the way through for the most part as I'm sketching along, just to keep the flow of my sketching. And later on, a lot of these lines, which are just simply defining the outside contour of the shapes, it's going to be filled in color and the line is going to be removed. So I'm just adjusting. And it's really nice with Xara, you can just take those things and just move and pull and push. Sometimes I do it with just the freehand pencil tool, but when you use the pen tool, you get a lot fewer control points and much smoother shapes. Now for these legs, I'm holding down the Alt key so that I can constrain it to a straight line, which is what I want in this case. I'm going to go for the ellipse for the eye. move it over. It's really nice. You can squish, rotate, skew. All of these things are available from the same select tool. Get it just the way you want. Now I'm going to select both those eye elements and do Control K for clone to make a second eye. So they're similar in their angle and rotation and skewing. This is all on one layer. I think this is, I don't know if this is my foreground layer. I have usually at the very bottom is the rough sketch. At the very top is a foreground layer, then there's a drawing layer, because most of the time that I do illustrations, I do line work, a black outline. Maybe later I convert it to different colors. But then underneath that is color. There's another layer underneath that, which is for background elements. Of course, you can always add or remove layers according to the need. I'm going to define a shape that's going to be his beak, which will be yellow, just to get it the way I want it. This is actually the 5th illustration in a series of 6. So you're going to see that to define some of these colors, I'm going back to a previous illustration. I'm going to copy this little bird here, go back to my other page, and then I'm going to use that to sample the colors so that they're consistent throughout the publication. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, and then to copy the attributes I can do a Control Shift A and then paste that color so it's the same color. This I'm just going to rob that little piece here, stick it down there. Now the way I'm going to get it to fit on that body shape is to select both and do Q, which is clip view. And when you use clip view, after you've done Q, it always pops to the front, so then you can do a Control B to put it to the back. I'm just going around the different things and filling them with a solid color and doing a right click on that little crosshatch square next to the color line, which the right click is for defining the outline and removing the outline. So here I'm getting a sample of the brown that I used for the definition on the beak. I'll take that, I'm going to straighten it out so I can make the curve just the way I want it. This I'm going to fill with black, get rid of the outline, push and pull. I'm going to take that line and adjust it. Whoop, created a new point, delete that. Okay, see if we can get this just the way we want it. It's like pushing a rubber band or something around, you know. Move his eye. Okay. Pop that to the back, Control B. And get a sample of what I use for these little hairs on the top of his head. Control Shift A to copy the attributes. And for his eyebrows. Now one thing that it has is that whatever you select and then go to draw a new line, it copies it. The new line is created with the same attributes of the last thing that was selected. So I wanted my eyebrows to be with the same kind of a line profile as the eyebrows on the original little bird that I did. So all I had to do is, before I drew those lines, I just selected those lines, and here I am adjusting these to a tapered look. So all I had to do is select the lines of the eyebrows of the first drawn bird, and then when I drew the new one, they were the same line type. Okay, now we're done with our little birdie. Goodbye, birdie. Delete that. Okay, let's make this white. No outline. Black. No outline. Black. No outline. And this is going to be that light gray minus the outline. to the front. Bring some of these elements to the front because it looks like they're going to be behind. And once I fill that body shape with black, I won't see any of that line work to be able to select it. So actually I think what I'm going to do, instead of filling it in the final color black, I'm going to use a very dark gray. Now here I'm taking a sample of the inside of his mouth, so I can Control Shift A, copy the attributes to the new mouth. And I'm going to take a copy of this outline. So it not only copies the attributes of the color of the line, but also the style of the line, the shape. Get this line here, seems to be the back, so I'm going to Control F to bring it to the front. That one there, select these teeth, make them white. Move the outline. Okay, now those teeth need to be to the back. Okay. Now I'm going to do the clip view. Select the two things and Control, or just Q for clip view. And now you see that popped forward. Now I can change it back to black. These teeth are going to have to go back at some point. Okay, so here's the ear. And I don't want that vertical line there. So what I did is I cloned it, and then I broke the ends of that line, and then deleted that section, so that it's actually two things there. There's the solid black fill, and then there's that C-shaped line. Okay, here we go. One thing that's nice in a clip view, if you're using the pencil tool, which I am right now, is you can individually select and modify the shapes of the different elements without having to do with the select tool. You have to do a control click to select individual elements inside of a clip view. But with the pencil tool, you just select it with the pencil tool. So that's kind of nice. Now with this nose, I want to do a little highlight, so I've created a little clone of that, and I'm going to copy the color that I used on the previous illustration, and copy the style and color, the attributes rather, onto that nose. Okay, so this is my foreground, and I am going to go to the color layer to do some background elements. Okay, we're going to do these flowers. Now here it's still got the previous line which I had used, which was as thick to thin, and I just prefer to use a uniform line, as sometimes when you're stretching a line out so far, it starts to get really skinny, and I like to be able to see the line clearly as I'm drawing. Okay, going around defining these shapes, use the ellipse tool for the inner little ellipse there. Adjust it. There we go. Let's do these toadstools over here. Make a few ellipses so I can then go back, rotate, skew, scale, adjust. Get them just how I like them. Now sometimes I kind of try to be conscious that, okay, this element's going to be to the back when I fill them with color, and so I'm going to draw this one first, and this is going to be to the front, so I'll draw that second. But there's a lot going on in the illustrations, and sometimes it just slows you down from the creative process, so to speak. Like here you see I'm starting to work on the top of this mushroom, even though when I do the other one that's supposed to be behind it, that will be to the front because it was created earlier than this one. But it's easy enough to rearrange everything as you go along. Adjusting these points. Now you see this little point here? It's a sharp point, so I want to change it to a curve. And that really helps sometimes if you have sort of not a very even looking curve. If you click it up at the top there, top left, you change it to a sharp node, and then right away shift it back over to a curved node. Then it helps to straighten it out. Okay, there we go. Let's do this grass. This is just freehand. Okay, what else do I want to put on this layer? I think I'm going to do this grass here. Just clicking with the pen tool to just define these kind of sharp points, and then I'll push. And sometimes it kind of bows out a little bit, so I have to make sure that that node is I think they call it a cusp, I'm not sure. I wanted a sharp kind of a bend. Adjust it. Okay, there's that shape. One more. I'm going to get a sample of this green that I used there. And Control-Shift-A to copy the attributes. A lot of this is just experimentation. Also in the color editor here, you see I have the HSV color model, which is my preferred color model to work in, so that I can take a color and make it darker or brighter while keeping the same basic color, kind of a monochromatic type approach. I'm adjusting these things. Actually, a lot of times what I'll do when I'm illustrating is I come across mushrooms that I need to draw, and I know the basic shape and colors for mushrooms. Although if you're looking at this picture, you're probably saying he doesn't know what a mushroom looks like. I have a vague recollection, but I'll do a search on Google Images and just pull up a bunch of thumbnails so I can kind of see what the color is, so I can have it somewhat looking authentic. Actually, in the end, you won't see it here, but I changed these to much more bright red color, and the dots were more whitish. And the part below was more of a gray. And now with the gradient, the fill bucket tool, I can take and adjust these, give it a little highlight at the bottom, highlight on the side of the lower part of the mushroom. Now with this grass, my original idea was just to have like a green outline like that, and maybe go down here and choose a color profile that has kind of a wavy line, just to give it some variation. In the end, I didn't really like that as much as I thought I would, so I'm going to just grab and continue and make it a fill. Now it's a gradient fill. I'm going to try to change it to the same color as that, adjust it so it's not so different than the color behind it. I'll actually take a sample of that color. Okay. Now I clicked on that grass part because I'm going to make a new grass part that goes behind it that I want to be filled with the same thing. Okay, there we go. Pop it to the back. Grab the fill bucket, and I want to adjust it so you can see more contrast between the two shapes. There we go. Okay, now with these I want to do the same thing as I did with the other thing of grass. Of course, it remembers the fill that I used before, and I just want it flat, and I want it similar to the surrounding green. There we go. Let's do one last thing. Okay, I am ready for, I believe, working on the background with the trees and the bushes. So we go to the next layer, the background layer. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a sample of how I did the lines on a previous illustration. I already started. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, let's go back. Let's find one, copy it. I like that type of line. I'm going to select these two, Control-Shift-A. Okay. Make them a little thinner because this tree is a little bit further back than the one that I sampled from. And start making these. I'm going to click, you see that little thing I just clicked? That means that when I pause and stop in drawing my stroke, that the next stroke will be a new stroke. Otherwise, the default, they'll kind of click together. And at this point, I want all these lines to be separate. I don't want them to be a continuation, one with the next, with the previous stroke. Okay, go along. And at some point, I'm going to change the thickness of this line as I get to the extremities of the branches, or do some more detailed line work, like maybe right soon, maybe like here. I can change it from 1.5 to 1, and as soon as I do that, any line that I draw from that point onward will be the thinner line. And the reason I'm doing all these little lines right now is because when I go to do the fill colors of the shapes of the branches and the main trunk of the tree, I'm going to use a solid color, and as I do each shape, I'll pop it to the back, leaving the lines on the top. I could actually do this on two separate layers, but works fine enough like this. Also, another nice thing is if you're doing all these little lines, I'm drawing, maybe 50 little lines. If I actually created a line and then named the color that I'm using for these lines, then if after I've drawn the tree I want to make adjustments to the color of all of the lines drawn with that newly named color, I can do it just by editing the color, and then all of the little lines will change. Because I think in this illustration one of the things I did is I made one of the trees a little bit darker, and then the lines didn't show up, so I had to go back and select all those lines because I didn't give it a unique name. Okay, we're going back here to see the color that I want to use for these leaves. Okay, there we go. I click that little thing off so that I can make closed shapes. I want my shapes now, my lines, to connect and come together. So if I stop and continue my stroke like here, the ends are connected. Round and round and round we go. There we go. I'll make this a little darker, just to have a bit more variation. Okay. Now, deciding what I'm going to do next. Okay, we're going to do the background color on this tree here. I click, click. I'm going to adjust as I go along. Click. Since this is below, I don't have to worry about the bottom edge. And once I get the whole shape, I do Control B to push it to the back. Do this branch. I'm adjusting this before I complete the shape, since when I do, I can't really see my sketch anymore. So it makes it a little more tricky to try to adjust it. I always feel like the sketch has a more organic look to it, whereas since vector drawing programs like Xara are so precise, that it takes away some of the kind of the human element to it, you know, the rough edges, the sweeping curves, kind of, you know, you draw a circle and it's a perfect circle, you draw a rectangle, it's a perfect rectangle, all the, you know, the corners are super sharp and everything like that, and it kind of makes it look more mechanical than a natural hand-drawn piece of art. So I really like to preserve as much as possible while still improving upon my pencil sketch. Okay, now here I'm going to do a clip view with a little shading for the under part of this branch. So I make the shape, make it just a tad darker, select the two things, hit Q, pops to the front, Control B, I'm going to push it back again. We adjust it, of course. There. Okay, now I want the main trunk to be behind that one. Okay. So there we go. Now I'm going to take that color, that darker color, and make some kind of different shade down here on the trunk of the tree. Push it to the back. Then if you do Control Shift F to bring it to the front one step, then it just comes up one and all the line work remains on the top. Okay, we're going to fill in this tree. Now you see I'm leaving that branch that's to the left, I'm leaving it as a separate element, so that I can fill that separately, bring it to the front, and also do a clip view with a shading on it. Just for that, just for the branch. Oops, hit the wrong button. Okay, push it to the back. There we go. Now, adjust things a little bit. We're almost there. This is all done in real time. And I am recording the audio portion separately from when I was recording the drawing session, so I could concentrate on one thing at a time. My poor little brain. Okay. See, it's a little funny when you have a filled in shape and you're trying to adjust it without being able to see behind it. You could always, an option too is you could make it semi-transparent and then you could see it better, but it's not so crucial. Okay, take that, pop it to the back. And I want a little kind of a knob or like a branch that got cut off here. And I'm going to sample the main thing and just make it a little bit lighter. Okay, take one of those lines. You see how I just selected one line so that when I drew a new one, it was the same profile. Okay, we're going to get that darker color to do a shadow. Don't have to worry about staying within the thing. You just do that clip view and there you go. Push that to the back. Pull it out a little bit. We still need to do a little bit more on this trunk. A few more lines. And let's do this contrasting. Just to add a little more interest and variation. This is pretty simple. You can get much more detailed. But this was just the approach that I chose. This, Control B to the back, Control Shift F to bring it one step forward. I'm gonna make like a little shade of the leaves at the top. I'm not going to use a clip view because it's a pretty basic shape. Make it a little bit darker. There you go. And then this one seems funny that it's lighter, so I'm going to make a gradient. Click the top of it and make the same color. Whoops. Slipped and did the green. So that's the same shade as that kind of shadow piece there. A little bit more. I get those two ends to connect. Okay. I got rid of it altogether. Oh, didn't work. Try it one more time. Back, forward. Okay. There we go. Now, just a bit more background elements. I selected those leaves so I'm changing my line back to just a uniform line. One of the things about doing little bushes like this is I try to make a variety within the little strokes. Some are short, some are longer. I'm adjusting the color because nature is full of variety. It's not all uniform. I like this color here for these background bushes. Plus I want to keep the color palette and scheme similar throughout the drawings. And since it took me a little bit of time to determine what colors I liked and wanted to use, I don't have to go through all that thought process for each new illustration. I just did a straight line because that's going to go behind these trees, so I don't have to do all the little curved lines. I'm holding the Alt key to make this go straight, and there we go. Control B, pop it to the back. I think the only thing we need to do now is get this sky color, this gradient that I used, and copy and paste it. I'm on the background layer, position it, and then I'll pop it to the back. Bingo. Okay. These lines, which I had originally done black, I think they look better white. They'll stand out. Once you put everything together, you start to see where it needs more contrast and what kind of gets lost. Whether or not you want to change the colors slightly, adjust them. I think we're almost to the end here. If you made it all the way through this, you're doing really well. Okay, pull these things in where it's sticking out a little bit. And actually I made this kind of a mask that goes on the foreground layer, like a little window. I'm going to delete, go to the foreground. I'm going to delete this line that I use more or less as a guide. I'm going to Control-Shift-V, paste it in place. And there you go. It masks out all the little rough edges. And there's my completed drawing. I hope you've enjoyed this and that it was helpful, or at least interesting to watch.